Now, John Rolfe is that senior Daily Telegraph reporter I mentioned who interviewed Anthony Albanese and today traced his changed positions. He joins me now. John Rolfe, thank you so much for joining me, and well done on your interview with Anthony Albanese. It seems you went to a lot of trouble to find out who he was before and trace his evolution over the years.
It certainly has been an evolution, transformation, physical and in his positions on many key topics in this election, Andrew. He is a changed man. We've got new glasses and new positions on many topics that are really front of mind for voters as they look towards the poll next month.
Now, you went back even to his student days and then his days working for Tom Uren, a minister in the Hawke government, and after that as well. You confronted him with some of his past positions and asked him to nominate the ones he'd changed. He'd changed quite a number of them. Was he happy to do this exercise, to present himself to the world as someone who'd reformed, who'd lived and learned?
Anthony Albanese has a very interesting past, very different to the average person. This is someone who volunteers that they hadn't met a Liberal voter until they went to university. He said to me that he didn't know a rich person and that he grew up in an area where no one had ever even been to the airport. That is the world that Anthony Albanese says that he grew up in, where you went to the footy on a Saturday, church on a Sunday, and seemingly, in his words at least, everyone went to a Labor Party branch meeting on every second Wednesday. So it's, to me, a world that I certainly can't identify with as a young person, doing how to vote cards for Gough Whitlam when you're less than 10 years old. But that is the world that Anthony Albanese grew up in. And he wants to now present himself as every man instead of each way elbow. And so he has fessed up to some of these positional changes on key subjects as we approach the election. I think he's trying to neutralise some things, trying to come back to more towards the centre at least on key topics like national security, because he knows that unless he presents something of himself, then people just aren't going to take him at face value and they're going to be too scared to vote for him.
Well, the two issues you raised there, let me grab one on there. Did you get the impression that this is a man who's had his mind changed by experience or changed by the need to win the election?
That's a very good question. I think it's a combination of both. When I asked him about the relative threats to Australia's future security, and you've got to remember that previously he has said that climate change was the greatest threat to Australia's future security. Well, now he says that it is a threat. He's moderated that position, and he says that the threat from global warming is on par with the threat posed by the Chinese leadership to Australia's future security. And also he nominated nuclear annihilation and the possibility of further health pandemics. So this is someone who seems to have read the tea leaves, if not the polling, and decided to moderate his position so as he can perhaps appeal to blue-collar working-class voters as well as the kombucha class that characterises his inner-city electorate. And that, of course, is the difficulty that any Labor leader faces now, that they've got to speak out of one side of the mouth in regional Queensland and regional New South Wales, and then they've got to use other words that can be translated in a different way when they're in the inner-city areas of Sydney and Melbourne.
This is a guy who was of the socialist left, the hard left of the Labor Party, now trying to present himself as a centrist. It seems strange that he has waited until now, having done all this, to introduce himself to voters and tell him what he really thinks. That is very, very late in the piece. Or I don't know, maybe he wasn't ready before.
I'll tell you one of the things that Anthony Albanese did let on to me was that by his own admission, he hasn't been ready to let on about who he really is. He told me during the on-the-record part of our interview that he was glad now that he hadn't won the Labor leadership when he first ran for it in 2013, because he felt, looking back on it, that he wasn't really ready. to assume that mantle and obviously run to be Prime Minister. And you've got to put that in context. This is someone who at that point in 2013 had been in federal parliament for 17 years. So maybe he's only just got comfortable in his own skin to the point where he can let us in and tell us more about who he is. And really, he's got no choice.
It suggests to me that he doesn't actually have the confidence to pull off what he's trying to do.
Certainly, when I compare him to other leaders that I've spoken to in the past, Anthony Albanese exudes the least amount of personal confidence. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm just saying that's the type of bloke that he is. And that remark, that anecdote that I related earlier from the interview that we did shows that he perhaps doesn't have that self-belief like a Malcolm Turnbull, that he was almost born to be the leader of the country. He's almost trying to convince himself as we go along.
John Rolfe, a fascinating piece. I urge viewers to have a look at it in your local News Limited newspaper. I think you'll find more clues to Anthony Albanese in that than you would to almost anything else I've read. Thank you very much for your time, John.
Great to talk to you.